Someone who has some answers and a little bit of experience.
That's right. Joining us right now, fresh off the H1N1 virus, is Dr. Daniel Kalla, ER physician, author, to give us the H1N1 update. How are you?
Good. Better now.
Now, you really did have the H1N1, or you assume so, because...
Yeah, I assume so. Both my youngest daughter and I had this high fever and cough and just felt like a truck ran us over for a couple of days, and that's pretty much H1N1.
And the reason why you didn't get tested is the reason why everybody doesn't get tested unless what happens?
Well, they're only testing the really sick people who are being admitted to hospital. The reason is the labs would be overwhelmed with testing. So it's all, if you have the symptoms, it's pretty much fair to assume you have H1N1. There's not a lot of other flu viruses going around right now. So if you got fever, cough, and achiness, you probably have H1N1.
Now, there's a lot of confusion about the vaccines, of course. And my wife is pregnant, and we have our toddler. He's 19 months old. As you could tell from the clip, he's incredibly healthy.
Yes.
But he just had the flu about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And there's a lot of confusion. Should a toddler or children under a certain age be immunized, especially if they've already had the flu? Should pregnant women be immunized? As a doctor, what are your suggestions? As a doctor, what is your suggestion?
I'm telling you, first of all pregnant women should be immunized for absolute sure, because they're the ones who are getting some of the worst forms of this illness.
And they have the first priority and can get it this week.
Absolutely, for good reason.
And should they have the one that has the adjuvant or without?
Apparently it's the without, and it's for reasons that are way beyond my tiny brain, but they're the ones who qualify for the without adjuvant, although there's not a lot of evidence saying that they really... It's that much safer. It's safe anyway. I don't mean to... It's safe. So certainly, to answer your first question, pregnant women should get it. Children probably should over 6 months. Even if they've had a virus, the problem is because we're not testing, we assume it was H1N1, but there's still a small chance he had another virus. So the recommendation is, unless you've been proven to have H1N1 with a hospital lab test, that you should get immunized even if you think you've had it.
And the other people who qualify this week for the first priority are people with underlying health conditions. What kind of conditions are they talking about when you talk about an underlying health condition?
Well, any sort of chronic debilitating disease that leaves people, wheelchair-bound, bed-bound, or underlying heart and lung disease. Even asthma is considered a risk factor. So obviously there's a degree of common sense. People have mild exercise-induced asthma probably aren't at any greater risk than the rest of us. But anybody with moderate asthma, moderate heart conditions, neurologic conditions, any kind of congenital conditions should be immunized.
And there are 2 flu shots. There is the H1N1 vaccine, and then there is also the seasonal flu shot this year. And people are a little bit confused. Do I get one? Do I get both? Which do I do? What should one do?
Well, I think there was a study that came out, a Canadian study that suggested people who get the seasonal flu shot before getting the H1N1 or before being exposed have a higher risk of getting H1N1. That's a bit controversial. But I think the current recommendations is that anybody under 65 should get the H1N1 vaccine first and then get the seasonal flu shot later. But people over 65 should be getting the seasonal flu shot.
Excellent.
Now, do you think that it's a lot of hype that's going on? Because for the first time ever, we live in this global community where everybody can find out what everybody's doing immediately. Do you think that people are just panicking for the sake of panic? Or do you think that this is just the smart thing to do?
I don't think there's a big H1N1 propaganda machine out there that's pushing this agenda. I think we have a pandemic, right? And it's the first time we've had a pandemic in 40 years. So I think there's reason for people to be nervous. Of course, it makes a great media story. So
does it?
I know. Look at that. So I think people are. I think there is sensationalism going on. So far, there's been some tragic cases, but it still has been a mild flu.
And people do die, unfortunately, every year from the flu, so it's not different in that sense. It's just a stronger virus.
Yeah, well, it's not even a stronger virus. It's just that our immune system is more naive, they say. So we've never been exposed to anything like it before, so we're much more susceptible to becoming infected. And unfortunately, the deaths, especially the most highlighted deaths, like the young boy in Ontario who died last week, have been quite tragic, and that doesn't tend to happen with the seasonal flu.
And most people who have died did have underlying health conditions, but a lot of people are just really, really scared of getting the virus. Because you had it, How bad is it, and how long does it last from your experience? I mean, you're assuming you had it because you had all the symptoms, but how long were you sick, and how bad was it?
Well, it's interesting. It was the first time in 15 years I had to cancel my shifts at work. I just couldn't go in. I mean, it probably would have been responsible of me not to go in anyway, being infective, but I just couldn't drag myself in. So I had to so there was about 3 or 4 days when I just didn't leave the house. I was just run down. But the weird thing is I've had flu before, and after that you kind of bounce back and feel pretty good. Suddenly you feel healthy again. I just still feel so tired. I mean, I'm back to my normal routine, but everything feels like an effort.
And you said your daughter
now.
had it too?
Yeah.
How did she bounce back?
She's better. She's less of a whiner, but she seems to be much...
Kids always seem to bounce back better.
Yeah, they seem to bounce back better. But I've heard tons of people, and it's documented that the fatigue after this flu is quite profound, and people are talking about 2, 3, 4 weeks before you get back to 100% health.
And speaking about profound, you are a profound and prolific writer.
Nice segue there, kid.
Thank you. So why don't you tell us about your latest book? Sure. I would love to hear about it, because your last book that you did I thought was absolutely fascinating and wonderful and exciting.
And this one has the happy title of Flesh and Blood.
Of Flesh and Blood.
Kids love it.
It is happy. It's a big sort of family epic saga that tells a 100-year history of this famed fictional hospital on the West Coast that's running into a current-day crisis, and all the characters who are going through their own personal crises. And it goes back and forth in time to tell about the founding of the hospital and how it affects the current-day events. And one of the things that's curiously topical about this is there's a big section about the Spanish flu. This hospital was hit by the Spanish flu in 1919, and
a lot of people are comparing the H1N1 outbreak to the Spanish flu.
And I had to do a lot of research to find out what doctors and patients, but especially the medical staff, went through in 1918, 1919 when the Spanish flu came on, and it wasn't pleasant. And but it was kind of fun to delve back into that.
Well, when will it be out?
April this year.
In April. Can't wait. And of course, if you want to grab a good book, Dr. Daniel Kalla has a few books out. If you want to pick them up, you can go to his website to find out more information. And there's lots of great resources out there to find out the real information about the H1N1 and the precautions that you should take. You can go to the website, fightflu.ca.